The day it all unraveled started like any other. I came home late, my briefcase in one hand and takeout in the other, expecting to find Lisa in the living room scrolling through her phone or catching up on her favorite crime drama. Instead, the house was unnervingly quiet. "Lisa?" I called, setting the food down on the counter. There was no response. I checked the bedroom, then the bathroom. Everything seemed in order, except for one glaring detail. Her closet was empty, the usual chaos of clothes and shoes replaced by stark emptiness. Confused, I stepped back, only to notice an envelope sitting neatly on the bed. My name was written on it in her handwriting. The shocking revelation: the letter inside was simple, direct, and utterly devastating. "Michael, I can't do this anymore. I've found someone who truly understands me, someone who gives me the excitement and passion I've been missing for so long. I'm sorry, but I've left to be with him. Please don't contact me. It's for the best." The words blurred as my hands trembled. I reread the letter, hoping I'd misunderstood, but the message was clear. Lisa had left me for another man. My initial shock quickly gave way to anger. How could she walk away so easily? After 10 years together, through the highs and lows, the fights and reconciliations, she decided I wasn't enough. But as the anger churned, something else stirred within me: resolve. An unexpected call. Before I could fully process what had happened, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have ignored it, but in that moment, curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I answered, my voice tight. "Michael," a man's voice said, low and steady. "I'm sorry to bother you, but you don't know me. My name is Greg. I think you and I have something in common." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause, then Greg said, "Lisa. She's with someone I know. My brother, Darren." The name struck me like a lightning bolt. Darren had been Lisa's co-worker, she mentioned, during their late-night work meetings and sudden weekend business trips. "You're saying she's with your brother?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Greg said, "and you're not the first man he's done this to." The plan. Greg's words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. Darren wasn't just some random man Lisa had fallen for. He was a serial manipulator, someone who thrived on breaking up relationships for his own twisted satisfaction. I could have let it go, walked away, and tried to rebuild my life without her. But the more I thought about it, the more one thought consumed me. Lisa and Darren weren't going to get away with this. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning. Greg and I met in person, sharing our stories and piecing together a plan. Darren was confident, smug, and dangerously charming. He'd used those traits to lure Lisa away, just as he had with others before me. But confidence has a weakness. It blinds you to the consequences of your actions. And Darren's overconfidence would be his undoing. A startling encounter. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Lisa and Darren were hosting a small party at Darren's penthouse, an event I only learned about through Greg's carefully cultivated sources. "Are you sure about this?" Greg asked as we parked a block away. I nodded, my jaw tight. "I need her to see what she's thrown away, and I need him to understand he's not untouchable." The plan was simple. I'd crashed the party, armed with a little truth and a lot of evidence. Greg had dug up information on Darren's past exploits, his shady business dealings, and even a few skeletons Lisa surely didn't know about. But when I stepped into the room, the sight of Lisa laughing with Darren stopped me cold. She looked happy, radiant, even. For a moment, I questioned everything. Then Darren spotted me, his smug grin faltering as he realized who I was. Setting the stage, "Michael," Lisa said, her voice a mixture of surprise and irritation. "What are you doing here?" Darren stepped forward, his expression carefully composed. "I don't think you were invited, friend." I ignored him, my eyes locked on Lisa. "I needed to see you, to understand why you left." Her face softened briefly before hardening again. "I already told you in the letter. I wasn't happy. Darren makes me happy." "That's because you don't know who he really is," I said, my voice rising. I turned to Darren. "But don't worry, Lisa. You're about to find out." I pulled out my phone, playing a recording Greg had helped me obtain. An incriminating conversation between Darren and one of his past conquests. In it, Darren bragged about his ability to steal women away, describing it as a game he never tired of. The room fell silent as the recording played, Darren's voice filling the space. Lisa's expression shifted from confusion to horror as she realized what she was hearing. The moment of truth, Darren tried to laugh it off, his charm faltering. "This is ridiculous. He's just trying to make you doubt us, Lisa." But she stepped back, her gaze flicking between Darren and me. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice trembling. Darren hesitated, and that was all the confirmation she needed. The air crackled with tension as Lisa turned to me, her face pale. "Michael, I held up a hand, stopping her. "Save it, Lisa. You made your choice. Now, live with it." As I walked out of the penthouse, leaving Lisa and Darren to deal with the fallout, a sense of closure washed over me. The aftermath of my confrontation at Darren's penthouse spread like wildfire. Darren's reputation, built on charm and deception, crumbled under the weight of the evidence I'd exposed. It turned out that Greg wasn't the only one who had suffered at Darren's hands. His web of lies had ensnared others, and my actions had opened the floodgates. I didn't hear from Lisa for days. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Part of me hoped she would stay with Darren, trapped in the mess she'd chosen. But another part, a quieter, angrier part, wanted her to admit her mistake, to face the consequences of her betrayal. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a text. "Michael, can we talk? Please." A desperate plea against my better judgment. I agreed to meet Lisa at a small cafe near her workplace. When she arrived, she looked different, tired, unsure of herself. Gone was the radiant confidence I had seen at the party. "Michael," she said softly as she sat down, "thank you for meeting me." I didn't respond, keeping my expression neutral. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know where to start. I didn't know about Darren. I had no idea what kind of person he really was." "That makes two of us," I said coldly. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I made a mistake, a huge mistake, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I regret everything." The turning point, I leaned back, studying her. "What exactly do you regret, Lisa? Leaving me? Or finding out Darren wasn't who you thought he was?" She flinched at my words, her shoulders slumping. "Both," she admitted. "I thought I was chasing happiness, but I was wrong. He was exciting, but it wasn't real. It was all lies." For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was quickly overshadowed by the lingering pain of her betrayal. "What do you want from me, Lisa?" She hesitated, then said, "I want to make things right. I don't know if it's even possible, but I want to try." A strategic decision. I had anticipated this moment, and I was prepared. "Making things right isn't that simple," I said. "You walked away, Lisa. You left me for someone else. And now that it's fallen apart, you want to come back? That's not how it works." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. "I understand, but I need you to know I'm sorry." As much as I wanted to let her apology soften me, I couldn't forget the pain she had caused. Still, I saw an opportunity, one that could benefit me and make her understand the gravity of her actions. "You want to make things right?" I asked. "Yes," she said quickly. "Then you're going to help me," I said, leaning forward. "Darren didn't just hurt you and me. He's hurt others too. If you're serious about making amends, you'll help expose him." Unraveling Darren's lies, Lisa agreed, albeit reluctantly. Over the next few weeks, we worked together to piece together Darren's schemes. Greg joined us, bringing more evidence of Darren's manipulations, including financial records that showed he had embezzled money from his own company to fund his lavish lifestyle. Lisa's involvement gave us access to Darren's inner circle, and the stories that emerged painted a damning picture of his character. He had lied, cheated, and stolen from countless people, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. But Darren wasn't going down without a fight. The counterattack. One evening, as I was reviewing documents Greg had sent me, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. "Michael, A familiar voice drawled. It was Darren. I stiffened. What do you want? He chuckled, the sound grating. You've been busy. I've got to hand it to you. You've caused quite a stir. But don't think for a second that you've won. You brought this on yourself, I said, keeping my voice steady. You think you're so clever, he sneered, but you don't know who you're dealing with. I've been through worse than this, and I always come out on top. The line went dead before I could respond. A dangerous revelation the next morning, Greg called with an urgent tone. Michael, we've got a problem. What is it? Darren's fighting back. He's trying to discredit us, spreading rumors, threatening witnesses. He's even hired a lawyer to go after Lisa. I cursed under my breath. Darren was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. Lisa arrived at my apartment later that day, visibly shaken. He sent me a letter, she said, handing me the envelope. Inside was a veiled threat, warning her to back off or face the consequences. I looked at her, my resolve hardening. We're not backing down. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. A new ally as we prepared for the next phase. An unexpected ally emerged. One of Darren's former partners, someone he had betrayed years ago, came forward with damning evidence that could ruin Darren for good. This is the nail in his coffin, Greg said as we reviewed the documents. But we need to time it perfectly. The stage was set for the ultimate takedown, and I knew Darren wouldn't see it coming. Darren's threats were escalating. His network of lies and manipulation was vast, and he wielded it like a weapon. Lisa, Greg, and I were constantly looking over our shoulders, unsure of what he'd do next. But we weren't backing down. The evidence we gathered was airtight: financial fraud, embezzlement, and even witness intimidation. It was enough to destroy his career, but we needed to expose him publicly. Darren's charm was his shield, and if we didn't strip it away, people would keep falling for his facade. Lisa's breaking point one evening. Lisa showed up at my door, her face pale and tear-streaked. He came to my apartment, she said, her voice shaking. What happened? I asked, leading her inside. She sat on the couch, gripping her phone tightly. He wasn't violent, but he made it clear he knows everything I've been doing. He said if I don't stop, he'll make my life hell. Her vulnerability tugged at something in me, but I forced myself to stay focused. Lisa, this is what he does. He wants you to be scared so you'll give up. But if you stop now, he'll win. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know if I can do this, Michael. I didn't realize how dangerous he could be. You're stronger than you think, I said, and you're not doing this alone. A trap is set, Greg, and I devised a plan to draw Darren out. Using Lisa as bait was risky, but she insisted on playing her part. He thinks he has control over me, she said, her voice steadier now, but I'm done letting him win. The plan was simple. Lisa would arrange a meeting with Darren under the guise of wanting to reconcile. Meanwhile, Greg and I would record the interaction, capturing any incriminating statements Darren might make. The meeting was set for a high-end hotel bar, a place Darren frequented. The confrontation I watched from a distance as Lisa approached Darren at the bar. He greeted her with that same smug charm that had lured her away in the first place. Lisa, he said, leaning back in his chair, I knew you'd come around. Her smile was brittle as she sat down. I just wanted to talk, Darren, to understand everything. He smirked. What's there to understand? You wanted excitement, passion. I gave you that. But you let those idiots turn you against me. Lisa kept her composure, her voice soft. Maybe I made a mistake, but I need to know. Why do you do this? Why hurt people like this? Darren's smirk faltered for a moment before he laughed. Because I can. People like you, so eager to believe in fairy tales. You're easy to control. It's not personal. It's just fun. The tables turned, Greg, and I captured every word, the recording device in my pocket flashing green. But Darren wasn't done. You know, he said, leaning closer to Lisa, you're still useful to me. Come back, and we can make this all go away. Michael and Greg won't be able to touch us. Lisa recoiled slightly, but Darren grabbed her wrist, his voice lowering. Think about it, or I'll make sure you regret it. That was my cue. I stepped forward, Greg close behind me. That's enough, Darren, I said, my voice steady. Darren's head snapped up, his smug expression replaced with irritation. You again? Don't you ever give up? This ends now, I said. We've got everything we need to show the world who you really are. Darren's composure cracked. He stood, towering over me, his face twisted with anger. You think you can take me down, he sneered. I've dealt with worse than you. People believe me because I make them want to. You? You're nothing. Not anymore, I said. Your lies, your manipulation. It's all over. And the best part? You did it to yourself. Greg stepped forward, holding up his phone. We've got the recording, Darren. Every word you just said. It's going straight to the media, the authorities, everyone. For the first time, Darren looked shaken. The fallout the recording went public the next day, sparking a firestorm of outrage. Darren's former victims came forward, emboldened by the evidence we'd exposed. His business partners severed ties, his reputation lay in ruins, and legal investigations were launched. Lisa watched the news coverage with a mixture of relief and regret. I never thought I'd see him brought down like this, she said. It's what he deserved, I replied. And it's only the beginning. Lisa's apology as Darren's downfall unfolded. Lisa and I had one final conversation. Michael, she said, her voice heavy with emotion. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I'm sorry for everything. I nodded, the bitterness in my heart softened by the sincerity in her voice. I appreciate that, Lisa, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back. I've moved on, and you should too. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. I understand. I just hope one day you can think of me without anger. I didn't respond, but as she walked away, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. The fallout from Darren's exposure was monumental. News outlets picked up the story, and the weight of public opinion turned against him. His name became synonymous with betrayal and manipulation. But as the dust settled, something nagged at me, a sense that Darren wasn't the end of this story. Late one night, Greg called, his voice unusually tense. Michael, we need to talk. I found something. A deeper conspiracy. Greg arrived at my apartment with a stack of documents and a laptop. He looked uneasy, his usual calm demeanor replaced with nervous energy. What's going on? I asked, motioning for him to sit. He opened the laptop, showing me a series of emails he had intercepted. These were sent to Darren from someone named M. Black. They go back years, discussions about targeting specific people, siphoning money from clients, and keeping everything under wraps. I frowned, scrolling through the messages. So Darren wasn't working alone? Greg nodded. Exactly. He's part of a bigger operation. And whoever this M. Black is, they're still out there. Lisa's revelation the next day. I met with Lisa to discuss Greg's findings. She had been staying out of the spotlight since Darren's exposure, trying to rebuild her life. When I explained the emails, her face went pale. I've heard that name before, she said. You have? She nodded. Darren mentioned Black once during a fight. He said something about owing them and needing to pull off one last deal to get out. What kind of deal? I don't know, she said, her voice trembling, but it sounded big, dangerous. The hunt for M. Black. Greg and I dove into the search for M. Black, piecing together fragments of information from Darren's emails, financial records, and contacts. It became clear that Darren had been a pawn in a much larger scheme, one that targeted vulnerable people and exploited them for profit. Through a contact in law enforcement, Greg obtained a lead, a shell company tied to M. Black operating out of a luxury office building downtown. This is it, Greg said, sliding the address across the table. If we're going to find answers, it's there. Walking into the Lion's Den, the office was sleek and intimidating, its glass facade reflecting the city skyline. Greg and I entered under the guise of potential clients, dressed in sharp suits and carrying a folder of fabricated documents. A receptionist greeted us, her smile polite but guarded. Do you have an appointment? We're here to see Mr. Black, Greg said smoothly. Her expression didn't falter. I'll let him know you're here. As we waited, the tension in the room grew. I glanced at Greg, who gave me a reassuring nod, but my instinct screamed that we were walking into something far bigger than we'd anticipated. The meeting we were led into a conference room, where a man in an impeccably tailored suit sat waiting. His dark eyes were cold and calculating, his demeanor exuding power. You must be the gentleman asking about Mr. Black, he said, his voice calm. I'm Mr. Deacon, his associate. We're interested in working with your organization, Greg said, sliding the folder across the table. We've heard impressive things. Deacon opened the folder, skimming its contents. Interesting, he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. But I have to ask, what's your angle? Greg leaned forward, his expression serious. We're looking for opportunities, and we're willing to do what it takes to earn our place. Deacon's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he might see through the act. The warning, you've done your research, Deacon said, closing the folder. But let me give you some advice. Be careful who you try to impress. Mr. Black isn't someone you find. He finds you. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. If you're serious, I'll pass your information along. But don't contact us again. We'll contact you. As we left the building, my pulse raced. That didn't go as planned, I muttered. It went exactly as planned, Greg said, holding up a small recording device. We've got his voice. Now we just need to figure out who he really is. A dangerous twist that night. Lisa called. Her voice panicked. Michael, someone's been watching me. There was a car outside my building all day, and when I tried to leave, it followed me. I grabbed my keys. I'm on my way. Stay inside and lock the doors. When I arrived, Lisa was visibly shaken. This is because of Darren, isn't it? She asked. It's not just Darren, I said. It's whoever he was working for. They're trying to intimidate us. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how much more of this I can take. You don't have to do this alone, I said firmly. We'll get through this. An unexpected ally. The following day, Greg received a surprising message. A former associate of Darren's who wanted to help bring down M. Black's operation. The man, who called himself Victor, claimed to have insider knowledge of the organization's structure and dealings. Victor agreed to meet us in a public place, his identity hidden under a baseball cap and sunglasses. I don't have much time, he said, sliding a USB drive across the table. What's on this? Greg asked. Everything you need to take them down, Victor said. But be careful. They don't just destroy lives, they erase them. The revelation. Back at Greg's apartment, we plugged in the USB drive and opened the files. What we found was beyond anything we had imagined. Detailed records of M. Black's operations, including financial transactions, client lists, and even surveillance reports on people they'd targeted. One file stood out, a folder labeled D. Lee. It's Darren, Greg said, opening it. Inside were emails, invoices, and notes detailing Darren's involvement in the operation. But one document caught my eye, a contract outlining Darren's agreement to target Lisa specifically. My blood ran cold. They didn't just go after her by chance, I said. They planned this. The files on the USB drive painted a chilling picture of M. Black's operation. Darren had been nothing more than a pawn, one of many agents used to infiltrate people's lives for profit and power. The organization had its hands in everything: blackmail, fraud, and corporate espionage. But the most damning discovery was the contract targeting Lisa. Darren hadn't chosen her out of infatuation or coincidence. She was part of a calculated move to access her connections in the real estate industry. The betrayal cut deeper than either of us had imagined. The decision. Greg and I sat in silence, the weight of the discovery pressing down on us. We have everything we need to bring them down, Greg said, breaking the tension. But it won't be easy, I replied. These people aren't going to let us expose them without a fight. Lisa, sitting across the room, looked up with tear-filled eyes. What can I do to help? I hesitated. She had been a victim, just like the rest of us, but involving her further felt risky. Greg spoke first. You've already helped by giving us what you know. But this next step? It's going to be dangerous. Lisa's expression hardened. I'm not running anymore. If we're going to end this, I want to be part of it. The plan, we decided to go straight to the authorities, using the USB drive and recordings to make our case. But we knew Black's organization had influence in high places. If the evidence didn't make it into the right hands, it could disappear. Or worse, backfire on us. To ensure public accountability, we also reached out to a trusted journalist, Emily Carter, known for her fearless investigative reporting. This is explosive, Emily said after reviewing the files. If what you're saying is true, this could be the story of the decade. But you need to be ready for the fallout. We are, I said, though the knot in my stomach told a different story. The confrontation. As Emily began preparing her report, Greg and I focused on delivering the evidence to the authorities. But Black's organization was already on to us. It started with a phone call. Michael, the voice said, smooth and menacing. You've made quite a mess. Who is this? I demanded, though I already knew. I'm the man you've been looking for, Black replied. And let me give you some advice. Walk away. You're out of your depth. I clenched my fists. We're not backing down. Your operation ends here. He chuckled, the sound cold and calculated. We'll see about that. A dangerous encounter that night. Greg called me in a panic. Michael, someone broke into my apartment. What? They took everything. The files, my computer. I barely got out before they showed up. My blood ran cold. Are you safe now? For now, Greg said. But they're not messing around. We need to move fast. The public exposure. The next morning, Emily's article went live, accompanied by damning evidence from the USB drive. It was front-page news, the headline reading, "Inside the Shadow Network, the organization behind decades of betrayal and fraud." The reaction was immediate. News outlets picked up the story, public outrage exploded, and authorities launched an official investigation. Black's name was everywhere, and his associates began turning on each other to save themselves. The final showdown, but Black wasn't going down quietly. A week after the story broke, Lisa received a package at her apartment, a small black box with no return address. Inside was a note. This isn't over. The message was clear. Black was still out there, watching. That night, Greg and I met with Lisa to discuss our next move. We've exposed them, Greg said. But Black is still a threat. If we don't finish this, he'll come after us. Lisa's face was pale, but her voice was steady. Then we finish it. A final trap. Using the remaining files, we traced Black's movements to a secluded estate outside the city. With help from law enforcement, we arranged a sting operation to corner him. The tension was palpable as we waited in unmarked vehicles, watching the estate through binoculars. Do you think he'll show? Lisa asked. He will, I said. He won't be able to resist trying to save his operation. And I was right. Justice served him. Black arrived just after midnight, flanked by 2 associates. The police moved in swiftly, surrounding the estate and cutting off all escape routes. As he was led away in handcuffs, Black locked eyes with me, his expression cold and unyielding. You think you've won, he said. This isn't the end. But it was. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, Black's empire crumbled. His associates were arrested, his assets seized, and his victims began to come forward, finally free from his manipulation. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Lisa decided to leave the city, seeking a fresh start. Thank you, Michael, she said before she left. For everything. I nodded. Take care of yourself, Lisa. Greg and I remained close, our friendship strengthened by what we had endured. As for me, I found solace in knowing I had taken back control of my life. Darren and Black had underestimated me, but I had proven that even in the face of betrayal, resilience could triumph. Life began to settle into a new rhythm. With Black behind bars and Darren's reputation obliterated, the chaos that had consumed my life seemed to fade. But beneath the surface, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. It started with small, subtle signs. An unfamiliar car parked near my apartment for hours at a time. Anonymous emails with cryptic messages like, "Nothing stays buried forever." And then there was Lisa's sudden silence. After moving to a small town to start over, Lisa had promised to stay in touch. For weeks, we exchanged occasional texts and calls. But then, nothing. A call for help one night, Greg called me, his voice urgent. "Michael, I think something's happened to Lisa." "What are you talking about?" I asked, already feeling a pit form in my stomach. "She sent me an email 2 days ago. It was strange, just a single sentence. 'I think they found me.' I tried calling her, but there's no answer. I even contacted her landlord. She hasn't been seen in days." My heart sank. "Do you think it's Black's people?" "Who else would it be?" Greg replied grimly. The investigation reopens, Greg, and I dove back into the files, desperate for any clue that could lead us to Lisa. As we combed through the data, one name kept surfacing, a high-level associate of Black named Victor Reed. Victor had managed to evade capture during the initial takedown. Known for his ruthlessness, he was rumored to be Black's right-hand man. If anyone had a reason to retaliate, it was him. "This guy isn't just dangerous," Greg said. "He's unhinged. If he has Lisa, we're running out of time." The Trap Titans, using what we knew about Victor, we tracked him to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place where bad things happened. Isolated, derelict, and crawling with people who didn't ask questions. Greg and I arrived under the cover of darkness, armed with little more than a hastily formed plan and a burning determination to bring Lisa back. "I can't believe we're doing this," Greg muttered as we crept toward the building. "Neither can I admitted. "But we don't have a choice." The dark truth inside the warehouse. The air was thick with tension. We found Lisa in a dimly lit room, her wrists bound to a chair, her face bruised but defiant. "Michael," she gasped when she saw me. Before I could respond, Victor stepped out of the shadows, a gun in his hand. "Well, well," he said, his voice oozing menace. "The hero returns." My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Let her go, Victor. This is between you and me." Victor chuckled. "Oh, it's so much more than that. You think you've won, don't you? Taking down Black, ruining Darren. But you didn't destroy the network. You just woke it up." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about?" Victor's grin widened. Black was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. You think his arrest ended this? It barely scratched the surface. A shocking betrayal. As Victor spoke, I noticed Lisa's eyes darting towards something behind me. Too late, I realized what she was trying to warn me about. A sharp pain exploded in my side, and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Greg stood over me, a bloody knife in his hand. "I'm sorry, Michael," Greg said, his voice hollow. "But I had to. They gave me no choice." My mind raced, struggling to process what was happening. "Greg, why?" Victor laughed, his voice filled with mockery. "You really didn't see it, did you? Your little friend here was working for us all along. How do you think you found all that evidence so easily?" The room spun as the realization hit me. Greg had been feeding me information, guiding me toward Black, but only to protect the larger network. Lisa's escape. While Victor gloated, Lisa sprang into action. Using the chaos to her advantage, she broke free of her restraints and tackled Greg, sending the knife skittering across the floor. "Run, Michael!" she shouted, grabbing the gun from Victor's hand. Ignoring the searing pain in my side, I scrambled to my feet and lunged for the door. Lisa fired a warning shot, forcing Victor and Greg to take cover as we bolted into the night. The network lives on. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of a crowded gas station. Gasping for breath, Lisa turned to me, her face pale but resolute. "They're not going to stop," she said. "Even without Victor, there are others. The network is still out there." I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "Then we'll find them," I said. "We'll finish what we started." A haunting epilogue in the weeks that followed. Victor and Greg disappeared without a trace. The warehouse was abandoned, leaving no evidence of what had happened there. Lisa and I went into hiding, knowing the network would come for us eventually. But this time, we were ready. As I sat in a small, dimly lit apartment, scanning files and preparing for the next battle, I couldn't help but wonder, how deep did this conspiracy go? The answer was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and I wasn't going to stop until I found it.